penthouse lounge of Skylight Noir shimmered above the New York skyline, flooded in gold light and soft jazz. Champagne flowed like water, and conversations were sharpened by wealth, ego, and the subtle sting of social hierarchy. Damien Blackwell stood at the center of it, olymphically dressed, casually untouchable. The youngest CEO in Blackwell Media's history, he carried the kind of confidence that wasn't learned but inherited. People didn't approach Damien. They circled him, hoping for proximity, never expecting vulnerability. Until Caleb Ashford. Of course, Caleb, smug in a navy suit and holding his glass like a weapon, leaned in with a smile, just a bit too wide. "You still believe money can buy anything?" he asked, swirling the wine in his glass. "Even people?" Damien arched a brow. "Shh. Money buys time. Access. Options. Power. That's everything, isn't it?" "Not quite," Caleb replied smoothly. "Because there are some things even your trust fund can't fake. Like love. Or dignity. Or authenticity." A few nearby executives chuckled nervously. The tension thickened like cream in coffee. Damien didn't flinch. "Say what you mean, Caleb. I'll bet you $5 million, Caleb said, his voice suddenly sharp, "that you can't marry someone completely outside your world. Not a model, not a socialite, not someone trainable. I mean someone invisible, unremarkable, unpolished." "Is this a game to you, no?" Caleb smirked. "It's a dare." Damien considered walking away until Caleb's next words landed like a slap. "Unless, of course, you're afraid you'd lose." Silence. Then Damien's eyes flicked toward the far side of the room, where a young woman in a gray maintenance uniform wiped down the baseboards near the exit. Her name tag read Ivy, but no one else seemed to notice. Damien's gaze lingered not with desire, but with calculation. She wasn't glamorous. Her dark hair was tied in a messy braid, her shoes scuffed. She looked exhausted, invisible, and entirely inconvenient for a man like him. Perfect. Damien set down his glass. 3 months, he said coldly. Married, public, real enough to fool everyone. Caleb smiled like the devil who just won a soul. "And if I succeed," Damien continued, "you resign from the board, for good?" A hush fell. Caleb nodded, lips curling. "Deal." Shook hands, two sharks circling blood neither of them could yet see. In the corner, Ivy Torres finished wiping the baseboard. She didn't know it yet, but her name had just been placed on a contract that would change her life forever. Ivy Torres moved like clockwork, precise, efficient, and unnoticed. The after-party was winding down, and her shift was just beginning. While the guests at Skylight Noir laughed over desert wines and gossip, Ivy scrubbed the marble floors under the grand piano, careful not to make noise. It was her third shift this week, and her knees were already bruised. "Ma'am," the junior manager whispered, snapping his fingers. "There's a spill by the rooftop bar." "On it," Ivy replied, masking her fatigue with a practiced nod. She had grown used to being background noise, invisible. It wasn't always like this. A few years ago, Ivy dreamed of culinary school. Her hands were meant for plating food, not cleaning up after it. But dreams didn't pay medical bills. And when her younger brother got sick and her mom lost her second job, Ivy dropped everything now. She worked janitorial rotation for Blackwell Media headquarters 12-hour night shifts, 6 days a week. The staff barely acknowledged her. The executives never looked at her. Ivy liked it that way. Anonymity meant survival. After cleaning the bar area, Ivy slipped into the break room behind the service elevator. She poured herself weak coffee from a cracked pot and sat for exactly 5 minutes, just enough to reset her legs before the sweep of the upper lounge. She pulled out her phone, opened a message thread with no replies, and stared at the most recent text from her brother. "Don't forget, Mom's checkup is Friday. I made arroz con leche like you taught me. It was bad. Love you." She smiled faintly, heart aching. "You're gonna make it out of this," she whispered to herself. Just a little longer. The intercom crackled. "Maintenance Team B, please report to level 68 main lobby for final sweep." She tossed the cup, grabbed her cart, and stepped back into the corridor head down. Body tired, soul still holding on, and that's when Damien Blackwell passed her. She barely looked up, assuming it was another suit. But Damien's gaze lingered on her face for half a second longer than it should have. And Ivy, she felt it, the shift in the air like something just tilted around her. But she couldn't name it, so she did what she always did. She kept walking. Ivy Torres moved like clockwork, precise, efficient, and unnoticed. The after-party was winding down, and her shift was just beginning. While the guests at Skylight Noir laughed over desert wines and gossip, Ivy scrubbed the marble floors under the grand piano, careful not to make noise. It was her third shift this week, and her knees were already bruised. "Ma'am," the junior manager whispered, snapping his fingers. "There's a spill by the rooftop bar." "On it," Ivy replied, masking her fatigue with a practiced nod. She had grown used to being background noise, invisible. It wasn't always like this. A few years ago, Ivy dreamed of culinary school. Her hands were meant for plating food, not cleaning up after it. But dreams didn't pay medical bills. And when her younger brother got sick and her mom lost her second job, Ivy dropped everything now. She worked janitorial rotation for Blackwell Media headquarters 12-hour night shifts, 6 days a week. The staff barely acknowledged her. The executives never looked at her. Ivy liked it that way. Anonymity meant survival. After cleaning the bar area, Ivy slipped into the break room behind the service elevator. She poured herself weak coffee from a cracked pot and sat for exactly 5 minutes, just enough to reset her legs before the sweep of the upper lounge. She pulled out her phone, opened a message thread with no replies, and stared at the most recent text from her brother. "Don't forget, Mom's checkup is Friday. I made Era's cliché like you taught me. It was bad. Love you." She smiled faintly, heart aching. "You're gonna make it out of this," she whispered to herself. "Just a little longer." The intercom crackled. "Maintenance Team B, please. Report to level 68 main lobby for final sweep." She tossed the cup, grabbed her cart, and stepped back into the corridor head down, body tired. Soul still holding on, and that's when Damien Blackwell passed her. She barely looked up, assuming it was another suit. Damien's gaze lingered on her face for half a second longer than it should have. And Ivy, she felt it, the shift in the air, like something just tilted around her. But she couldn't name it, so she did what she always did. She kept walking. The next morning, Ivy Torres arrived for her shift to find something entirely out of place in the maintenance corridor. Damien Blackwell, standing in front of her janitor closet in a tailored black coat, holding a manila envelope and looking like he had accidentally wandered into another dimension. "What are you doing here?" Ivy asked, blinking twice. "Looking for you," Damien said calmly. She glanced around. "There's a scheduling board in HR, or a phone. I prefer direct conversations. With people who matter to a bet, I intend to win." She frowned. "A what?" Damien stepped closer, but not threateningly. His tone remained even, like he was discussing a business acquisition. "I have a proposal for you, Miss Torres." She folded her arms. "I'm not quitting." He almost smiled. "Not what I'm here for." He handed her the envelope. Ivy hesitated before opening it. Inside, a check with more zeros than her family had seen in a lifetime. And a legally binding contract. Her stomach dropped. "What? Is this a marriage agreement?" he said smoothly. 3 months. "We marry publicly, live together, attend social functions. You'll be paid generously. After that, we part ways. No strings. You want me to?" "Marry you," she repeated flatly, like ... legally? "Yes. For money." For optics, Ivy stared at him, eyes narrowing. "Is this some kind of prank?" "No," Damien said. "It's strategy. You play the part, and when the curtain closes, you get your cut. I'm not for sale." Damien's voice soft and not kind, but calculated. "I know about your mother's condition, your brother's. Student loans. The eviction notice on your apartment door last month, her jaw clenched. You've been spying on me. I did my due diligence. Wow, that makes it sound so noble. He reached into his pocket and placed a pen on top of the folder. You've worked hard. You've been invisible. I'm offering you a role. Play it well and you walk away. Financially free. Ivy looked down at the paper, her hands trembling slightly. The check was real. The contract was terrifyingly specific. You think I'm desperate? She whispered. I think you're smart enough to know when a temporary sacrifice unlocks permanent freedom. She looked him dead in the eye. And after 3 months, we get divorced. You keep the money. I keep the headlines. That's it. Silence settled between them. Then Ivy reached for the pen. Fine, she said quietly. But if I find out you're lying about anything, I won't go quietly. Damien nodded once. Wouldn't expect you to. Turned and walked away, leaving her in the corridor, clutching a deal that would rewrite the story of her life. One carefully staged photo at a time. The city courthouse was eerily quiet that morning. Rain tapped the windows in soft, steady rhythms like the world itself was holding its breath. Ivy Torres sat in the back seat of a black town car, dressed in a plain navy blue dress. Damien's assistant had couriered to her apartment that morning. It was the nicest piece of clothing she'd owned in years, and yet it felt more like a costume than an outfit. You look appropriate, Damien said from beside her, barely glancing away from his phone. Thanks, she replied dryly. You sound thrilled. He looked up then, eyes sharp. I'm focused. This is a transaction, not a fairy tale. She bit back a sarcastic reply. She wanted to scream at him to ask why he was so cold, so distant, but the check folded in her purse reminded her to stay quiet. She was here for a reason. 3 months, just 3. When they entered the courthouse, 2 lawyers were already waiting his. Of course, Ivy hadn't brought anyone. She didn't have anyone. The ceremony wasn't a ceremony. It was paperwork. Pens, signatures. A brief reading of legal rights. Ivy could barely hear the officiant over the pounding in her own chest. Do you, Damien Elias Blackwell, take Ivy Marisol Torres to be your lawfully wedded wife under contract, terms stipulated? I do. His voice didn't waver. Neither did his expression. The officiant turned to her. And do you, Ivy Marisol Torres, consent to this union? Ivy paused. She looked at Damien. He looked right back, unreadable. She inhaled once. Slow and shallow, I do. The stamp hit the final page with a definitive thud, and just like that, Ivy Torres became Mrs. Damien Blackwell. No kisses. No photos. Just a signature and a storm waiting outside. As they walked back to the car, Damien handed her an envelope. What's this? She asked. Your schedule, my calendar. A wardrobe consultant is coming tomorrow. You'll need media training, posture, coaching, and basic etiquette lessons. Don't be late. Ivy stopped walking. Do you ever say please? Damien turned to her slowly. Only when I want something. She didn't reply, just got in the car and stared out the rain-speckled window the entire ride back. When they arrived at Blackwell Tower, the security team nodded without question. Damien led her to the top floor, his private penthouse. Now hers too. Your room's down the hall to the left, he said, already loosening his tie. Separate, of course. Of course. I'll see you at 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Ivy stood alone in the sprawling marble entryway as Damien disappeared into his office. She exhaled slowly, taking in the cold elegance of her new world. Then she whispered to herself, 3 months. That's all. At precisely 6 a.m., Ivy opened her bedroom door and nearly tripped over a rolling garment rack taller than she was. Good morning, Mrs. Blackwell, came a crisp voice from across the penthouse hallway. Welcome to your transformation. Standing near the windows like she owned the skyline was Rena Fuji, Blackwell Media's top image consultant. In a sleek gray suit with pointed heels and a clipboard like a sword, she eyed Ivy the way a sculptor sizes up a block of flawed marble. You're late by 2 minutes. I didn't realize the clock was sacred, Ivy muttered. Rena raised an eyebrow. It is now Two assistants materialized behind her, wheeling in jewelry cases and heels that looked like weapons. Another held a tray with espresso and cucumber water. Ivy blinked. This feels more like a photo shoot than a marriage. It is, Rena replied. Only the audience doesn't know they're watching. Motioned toward the sofa. Sit. We begin with posture. And so it started. 3 hours of sitting, walking, resitting, balancing books on her head, and learning which angle made her jawline look more engaged but serene. Ivy wore 5 dresses before noon and rejected 4 of them. To hostess, to stepmother, to trying too hard. You're lucky, Rena said as she pinned up Ivy's hair. You have what I call unpredictable symmetry. It reads authentic, expensive, once refined. Was that a compliment? Don't get used to it. By lunchtime, Ivy felt like she'd been in a car crash with a Vogue editorial team. She sat on a velvet bench in the master closet, still wearing stilettos she hadn't yet learned to walk in, staring at her reflection in a gold-trimmed mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Hair swept into a soft twist. Diamond studs. A deep green wrap dress that made her look older, taller, richer. You okay? One of the assistants asked gently. Ivy nodded, just wondering where Ivy went. She's still there, the girl said quietly. But now the world has to squint harder to see her. Ivy gave a faint smile. Not many people in this tower spoke kindly. By the time Rena left, she handed Ivy a thick folder. Study this. It includes dinner etiquette, conversation rules, media guidelines, and a cheat sheet on Damien's favorite board members. Anything in here about how to smile when someone's insulting you in French? Yes, page 8. Rena turned to leave, then paused. You may not have chosen this life, she said, but you're in it now, and no one expects you to win. She looked Ivy in the eye, so prove them wrong. The restaurant was called Elysian, a rooftop dining club reserved for names printed in glossy magazines and whispered behind velvet ropes. Tonight, Damien Blackwell arrived with Ivy Torres on his arm. She wore a navy satin gown that draped like liquid night, a look curated by Rena and a small army of stylists. Her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable. But beneath the elegant exterior, her nerves coiled like live wires. Damien, as always, looked effortless. Crisp suit, measured. Steps, eyes scanning the room with detached authority. As they entered, the room shifted. Forks paused, conversations dipped. Whispers bloomed. Who is she? She was cleaning floors last month. She stunned with Damien. Ivy heard every syllable behind every forced smile at their table. Caleb Ashford greeted them like a vulture dressed in cashmere. He stood, kissed Ivy's hand with smug amusement, then turned to Damien. Well, he said, voice like dry wine. You've outdone yourself. Damien gave nothing back. Enjoy your evening, Caleb. Another couple arrived board members. Introductions were made. Ivy smiled where she should, nodded when expected. Inside, her stomach churned. Dinner began. Caviar. Lamb. Tension. Ivy stayed quiet at first, watched, measured. But when one guest asked her, with mock sweetness, so, Ivy, how's the adjustment been? This must be a leap from mop buckets to wine pairings. Something snapped. Ivy set down her fork. It's not that different, she said calmly. The table blinked. She continued. In both cases, you clean up what other people leave behind. The only real difference is what you're allowed to wear while doing it. Silence. Even Damien looked up from his plate. The woman blinked, clearly unsure if she'd been insulted. I suppose that's one way to look at it, she said. It's mine, Ivy replied, sipping her water without breaking eye contact. Moment passed. Then someone chuckled. Then another. Damien's lips twitched. Just slightly, barely visible, but it was there. Ivy returned to her plate, letting the tension dissipate on its own. Later. In the car, Damien broke the silence. You didn't embarrass me, he said. Ivy arched an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? No. Just an observation." She smirked, turning to the window. "Next time, maybe you'll let me pick the wine." He didn't reply. But she didn't miss the way his gaze lingered on her reflection in the glass. Night, as Ivy stood barefoot in the guest suite, removing earrings that cost more than her rent, she looked at herself in the mirror. Maybe she didn't belong here, but tonight she survived it, and tomorrow she might just own it. Blackwell Tower was unusually quiet for a Friday evening. Most executives had gone home, but Ivy stayed. Not because she had to, but because the espresso machine on the executive floor had flooded. Custodians had twisted her ankles, slipping on the marble tiles. "Let me help," Ivy said, kneeling beside the older woman. "You're not supposed to?" The woman winced. "I'm not supposed to be here at all," Ivy replied gently. I die. "But here we are." She helped clean the spill, wrapped the ankle with supplies from the staff first aid box, and sat the woman down in the corner lounge with tea and a protein bar from her bag. No cameras, or just kindness. What she didn't know. Damien was standing behind the tinted glass of the conference room watching. He'd returned to grab his forgotten tablet before a virtual meeting in London. Instead, he paused, watched Ivy roll up her gowns, hem with a hair tie so she could mop a floor. Watched her ignore rank, image, power, no designer dress, no rehearsed lines, just Ivy, unfiltered. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Damien entered the shared kitchen. Ivy stood barefoot in an oversized hoodie, her hair in a messy bun, making ramen in a copper pot. "You missed your meeting," she said, not turning. "I rescheduled." For the first time, the great Damien Blackwell chose a delay. "There's a first for everything." She slid a bowl across the island. "Didn't peg you for a noodle guy." "Not." "Then why are you still standing there?" Pulled out a stool. "I saw what you did today." She froze for a beat. "What exactly did I do?" she asked. "You helped someone. You didn't have to. No one saw it, but you did it anyway." Shrugged, stirring her broth. "Isn't that the point? Doing the right thing when no one's watching?" Damien didn't respond immediately. "Then, you're not like anyone I know." She turned to face him, arms crossed. "I'm not here to impress you, Damien. This arrangement, it's a contract, not a performance." He leaned forward, elbows on granite, eyes searching hers. "I know. That's why it's starting to matter." Silence stretched between them, soft but charged. Ivy exhaled. "I still think you're insufferable." Damien smiled. "Good, we're still on schedule." She rolled her eyes and turned away, but her smile stayed just a little longer than it used to. And Damien, he stared at the back of her hoodie. It's the steam from the ramen curling between them like a fragile piece. Treaty something was shifting. Neither of them would say it, but both of them felt it. The rain tapped gently against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, washing the New York skyline in watery gold. Inside, the lights were dimmed, the fire flickered low, the aroma of ginger, garlic, and soy filled the air. "I can't believe you know how to cook," Damien said, eyeing the sizzling stir-fry Ivy tossed in the pan. "You thought I lived on vending machine granola bars? I thought you'd outsource it." Ivy scoffed. "Like you, I find therapy in sauteing things." They ate on the couch, no formal dining table, no silver flatware, no stylists in the wings, just chopsticks, mismatched bowls, and bare feet brushing against plush rugs. It was normal, unsettlingly so. Damien ate in silence at first, uncharacteristically, slow. Ivy watched him, then finally asked, "What? You didn't skimp on the chili oil," he muttered. "Can't handle heat, Mr. Blackwell." "I can handle anything," he said automatically, then regretted it. Ivy caught the slip, leaned back and sipped her soda. "You always talk like that," she said. "Like everything's a press release." Damien frowned. "It's habit or armor," he set his bowl down. Ivy didn't press. She just let the silence grow until it became comfortable. Then, quietly, "What was your mom like?" Damien blinked. That question hadn't touched his airspace in over a decade. "She was elegant," he finally said. "Controlled. She hosted Parties with 200 people and never had to raise her voice. Ivy waited. She married my father because it made business sense. The merger of two families, a dynasty, and you. I was the product. Expected to be polished, perfect. No mistakes, no emotions, just results. His voice wasn't bitter, just ... factual. Did she love you? He paused, a muscle in his jaw ticking. She loved order, fit into it, until I didn't. Ivy put down her chopsticks. Is that why you treat everything like a contract? Damien didn't answer right away. Then softly, I trust rules more than people. They don't lie. That's not true, Ivy said. Rules get rewritten all the time. But at least they bleed when they break. Damien looked at her, expression unreadable. Then, you're too honest for this world. She smiled faintly. I've been told that, usually right before. Getting fired, he didn't laugh, but his eyes softened. For the first time, Ivy didn't see Damien the tycoon. She saw a boy in a custom-tailored cage. Taught to win at all costs, but never taught how to stay when things got real. And for the first time, Damien didn't see Ivy the project. He saw a woman who could see through steel. No flashbulbs, no audience. Just two people on a couch, halfway through takeout and halfway into something neither of them expected. At the Ashford Club downtown, bourbon swirled in crystal glasses while billion-dollar gossip floated between leather armchairs. Caleb Ashford leaned back in his chair, watching the flames dance in the fireplace as one of his colleagues chuckled. So, word is Damien's little experiment is going better than expected. Caleb didn't laugh. He hadn't in days. There was something off. He'd expected Ivy Torres to be overwhelmed, humiliated, broken under pressure. He expected Damien to toss her aside before the second gala, but instead, Damien had missed 3 executive briefings. He'd skipped poker night. And at the last board dinner, he had actually smiled when Ivy made a pointed joke about one of the old-school shareholders. It wasn't performance anymore. It was drift. And Caleb didn't like it. Not one bit. That night, he scrolled through Ivy's old employee file, on his tablet, frowning. Former janitorial staff, no college degree, family medical debt. Nothing about her screamed threat. But Damien was acting differently, quieter, softer, less. Blackwell. He sipped his drink. Eyes narrowing, then opened a locked folder on his device. The Ivy Challenge contract. He read it again, line by line. 3 months, minimum public exposure. Defined cohabitation. No romantic entanglements required. Outcome, public believability. Nowhere in the contract did it say, fall in love, which meant ... Caleb smirked. He had leverage. The next day, called a private investigator. Full social pull, he instructed. I want everything on Ivy Torres. Her family, her financials, her apartment, her past jobs, and I want surveillance on Damien. Is this legal? The man asked. Caleb smiled, swirling the last of his bourbon. Legal's a suggestion. He ended the call and leaned back in his chair. If Damien Blackwell thought he could rewrite the terms of a game Caleb created, he was in for a brutal reminder, because this wasn't just about a bet anymore. It was about control, and Caleb never lost control. Meanwhile, back at Blackwell Tower, Damien stood by the penthouse balcony, watching Ivy water the small plant she'd placed in the corner of the shared office. Why a basil plant? He asked, sipping espresso. Ivy shrugged. Because it fights to stay alive, even when ignored. Damien watched her silently. In the back of his mind, something itched. A gut feeling. Like a storm quietly gathering over the horizon. He didn't know yet that Caleb was watching, but soon he would. And when he did, everything would change. The ballroom of the Lucent Gala sparkled with chandeliers and ego. It was the event of the season, a benefit for digital literacy, tended by media. Moguls, influencers, old money, and anyone who paid enough to matter. Damien arrived in a sharp black tuxedo, Ivy at his side in a sapphire silk gown that hugged her perfectly measured confidence. They were the couple everyone whispered about, and for the first time, Ivy didn't mind. She'd memorized every name on the guest list, practiced every fork placement. She had even caught Damien looking at her when he thought she wasn't watching, something that almost looked like pride. Almost as they mingled, glasses clinked, compliments flew, and Ivy felt briefly like maybe, just maybe, this arrangement had become something more, until she saw Caleb. He stood across the room, sipping wine with the air of someone who had just loaded a gun and was waiting for the silence to end. Her stomach dropped. Damien noticed too. "What is he doing here?" he muttered. Ivy turned to him. "Is he a donor?" "He doesn't support anything unless his name goes on the wall." Before Damien could move, a voice boomed over the ballroom's sound system. "Good evening, everyone," Caleb said, walking toward the stage with a champagne flute raised. "Before we dive into tonight's auction, I'd like to share a fun little story." Ivy stiffened. Damien stepped forward, but it was too late. Caleb smiled, slow and venomous. "You see, 3 months ago, a dear friend of mine made a bet that he could turn a janitor into a headline-worthy wife, and not just any janitor. One with debt, no pedigree, no media poise, and no clue." A murmur rippled across the room like an earthquake beneath silk. Caleb pulled out a printed document. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you ... the Ivy Challenge contract." He handed it to the event host, who hesitated. "This," Caleb continued, "isn't fiction. It's business. Cold, calculated, and very ... Blackwell." Ivy's vision blurred. The contract, he wasn't lying. He never denied it. Damien stood frozen. Ivy turned to him, breath shaky. "You told me this was real," she whispered. His voice caught. "I was going to tell you. But you didn't. Because it changed, it was always a bet," she said. Prize. And without waiting for the whispers to catch her, Ivy walked out, heels clicking like thunder across marble, heart breaking without sound. Behind her, Damien didn't move. Not yet. Not because he didn't want to, but because for the first time in his life, he didn't know how to fix something he broke. And for the first time in hers, Ivy wasn't willing to be fixed. The night air outside the lucent gala was biting, but Ivy didn't feel the cold. She walked fast, heels in one hand, fury in the other. The sound of traffic, paparazzi shouts, and high heels clicking on pavement faded behind her. Her gown billowed like smoke, but all she could feel was the burn in her chest. She wasn't a wife. She was a headline. When she reached the corner, she flagged the first cab she saw. "To anywhere that isn't this life," she said as she climbed in. The driver blinked. "So, ... Queens." She exhaled. "Yeah, Queens." 30 minutes later, she stood in front of the boarding house she'd once called home, a creaky, aging 3-story brick with curtains that didn't match. It smelled like old carpet and warm soup. Somehow, it was exactly what she needed. Her old landlady opened the door. "Ivy Torres." She blinked. "Thought you went and married a billionaire." "Did," Ivy said. "Big mistake." Woman grunted. "You want your old room back?" "I want my name back first." The room would be a bonus. 3 hours later, Ivy sat cross-legged on a twin bed, wearing thrifted pajamas and eating boxed mac and cheese. Her phone buzzed with messages from unknown numbers, reporters, bloggers, even tabloids. She turned it off, for the first time in weeks. There was no etiquette training, no whispered judgment, no Damien. Only Ivy, just Ivy the next morning. She walked into Bluefinch Cafe, a tiny corner coffee shop where she used to help out part-time. The owner blinked. "You, ... look familiar. I used to sweep floors here. You wore heels doing it?" She smiled faintly. "Those days are over." He handed her an apron without question, and just like that, Ivy was back to where she began. The steam of espresso, the clink of mugs, the sound of her name called with genuine familiarity. Not staged charm. She worked double shifts, cleaned tables, Made perfect cappuccino foam. No one asked what happened, no one needed to. They saw her. Not the scandal, not the dress. Not Mrs. Blackwell, just Ivy. Each night, she went home to a room with one lamp and a window that overlooked a fire escape. She lit a candle, wrote in her old sketchbook, and reminded herself of something vital. She had survived worse than heartbreak. She had built herself from ashes. Once she could do it again. The penthouse had never been so quiet. No footsteps, no perfume in the hallway, no basil plant by the window, just Damien Blackwell alone. He sat in his home office, still wearing the same tuxedo from the gala, now undone and wrinkled, much like the man inside it. The contract Caleb had exposed lay on the desk, a cruel reminder of how carefully he had crafted his own downfall. He picked it up, read every clause again. It sounded so clean on paper. 3 months. Cohabitation. Mutual benefit.
How emotional.
Obligation. No clause for falling in love. No clause for ruining her. He stood, walked toward the window, and stared down at the city that once bowed to him. Now it looked like judgment, tall, cold. Watching his assistant Eli entered quietly. "She's gone," he said, voice low. "No social, no response. Her apartment is empty." Damien didn't reply. Eli hesitated, then added, "You asked me once what would happen if you ever lost control of the narrative." Damien looked at him. "I remember." "Well," Eli said gently, "this is it." After Eli left, Damien sat at his piano, the one he hadn't touched in years. The keys were still perfectly tuned, still cold, like everything else in his world. He played a few notes. Nothing came out right. He stopped. 2 days passed, then 3. On the 4th day, walked into a board meeting and resigned from 2 committee positions. Caleb wasn't there. The snake had vanished into shadows again. On the 5th, Damien signed a transfer of funds donating every dollar earned from Ivy's publicity surge to a literacy program. Ivy once mentioned offhand during dinner, "No press release, no applause, just ... action." On the 6th, he walked into Project Ripple, the underfunded social program Ivy used to volunteer for. "I'd like to help," he told the director. The woman squinted. "You're Damien Blackwell." "Yes. What's the catch?" "There isn't one." And when they handed him a mop to clean the storage room, didn't hesitate, because maybe what he needed wasn't control. Maybe it was consequence. That night, he wrote Ivy a letter. Not a text, not an email, not with logos or headers. Just his. Handwriting raw, imperfect, real. "Ivy, I built towers out of contracts. You walked in and reminded me how to live inside one. You didn't change me. You showed me who I'd buried to survive. I don't deserve you, but I'll spend whatever time it takes to become someone who could. No more deals. No more games. It's just truth." And he mailed it not to impress her, but because it was the first thing he'd ever sent that wasn't meant to sell anything only. To say, "I'm still here?" The bell above the cafe door chimed softly. Ivy looked up from behind the counter at Bluefinch Cafe, halfway through restocking sugar packets, expecting a delivery guy or a regular. Not him. But there he was, Damien Blackwell, in a gray hoodie and jeans that looked entirely too normal. No tailored suit. No entourage. Just him holding a letter in one hand and something unreadable in his expression. Her chest tightened, but her face didn't flinch. "Table for one," she asked flatly. He stepped forward, slowly. Like he knew he was crossing into sacred ground. "I'm not here to explain," he said, "or ask for anything." "Good," Ivy replied, placing a mug down a little too firmly. He offered the letter. The same one he had mailed, now creased at the edges, clearly read, maybe more than once. "I just came to say thank you," Ivy blinked. "Thank me? For what, letting you humiliate me in front of everyone who ever mattered?" "No," he said gently. "For showing me I could be better. Not richer, not louder, just ... human." She exhaled, leaning against the counter. "Is that your new angle now? Vulnerability as a marketing strategy? No brand attached?" Damien said. "I'm not here as the CEO. I'm here as the guy who made a mistake so big, it woke him up. Silence. Customers chatted in corners. Toddler giggled near the window. The world spun normally while Ivy stood on the edge of the past and whatever this moment was trying to be. She gestured to the empty bar stool. You can sit, but you're paying for coffee this time. He sat, gratefully. She poured him a cup, nothing fancy, just drip roast in a chipped white mug. The same kind she served everyone. Damien took a sip, winced slightly, and smiled. It's terrible, he said. It's honest, she replied. He chuckled. Exactly why I'm here. They sat in quiet for a moment. Not as husband and wife. Not as boss and employee. Just as Damien and Ivy to people with bruises, trying to figure out if they still recognize their reflections. Finally, Ivy spoke. So, what now? Damien looked at her, eyes steady. Now, I keep showing up. Not to fix you. Not to fix anything. Just to be here. If you'll let me. She didn't respond right. Oh wait, but she didn't say no either. And that was enough for now. It arrived on a Tuesday. No stamp. No name. Just an envelope tucked quietly into the planter box outside Bluefinch Cafe. Nestled beside the basil ivy watered every morning. She found it before opening the shop. Plain cream-colored. Her name handwritten in the center. Small and careful, not the kind of writing you'd expect from Damien Blackwell. She took it inside, sat on the back step with a lukewarm coffee, and opened the flap slowly, unsure what to expect. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, and the kind of words that didn't need a signature. Ivy, I know I already said thank you, but this letter isn't about gratitude, it's about fear. I've spent most of my life learning how to build walls, quarterly ones, legal ones, emotional ones. I thought if I controlled everything, no one could hurt me. No one could leave. No one could ever see the parts I couldn't perfect. Then you came in, literally scrubbing marble floors, and without trying, you unraveled all of it. Not with lectures, not with threats, just with your presence. Your truth, your refusal to shrink. And suddenly, I didn't want walls. I wanted windows. I wanted to see the world the way you do. Unfiltered, painful, honest. The worst part, I didn't realize any of that until after. I lost you. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to believe me when I say, I am not proud of who I was, but I'm proud of the man you showed me I could become. If there's a door back into your life, even if it only opens a crack, I'll be waiting outside it. And if not, I'll keep building things that matter, because that's what you taught me. No contracts. No cameras. Just this. I see you. I miss you. I love you. Divvy stared at the page. For a long time, she said nothing. Just let the words sit in her hands. Trembling slightly, she folded the letter carefully, pressed it to her chest, then tucked it inside her apron, not to forget it, but to carry it. Outside, the morning bustle began. A few customers filtered in, but something inside her had shifted. That night, Ivy took the letter home and placed it between the pages of her old sketchbook, the one Damien had once picked up without permission. Now, he had given her something freely, not control. That meant more than any contract ever had. The invitation came folded inside a children's drawing, crayon colors, stick figures. Ivy recognized the handwriting. Instantly, it was the little girl from Project Ripple, a nonprofit Ivy used to volunteer for before her world turned upside down. Scrawled beneath the crooked rainbow were 5 words. Please come to our garden day. Attached was a post-it note, less colorful but far more surprising. Would love for you to be there too. No press, no cameras, just us. Divvy stared at it for a long time. She didn't RSVP, she simply showed up. The following Saturday, she stood at the edge of a small city lot turned urban garden, patches of soil, recycled planters, and handmade signs that read "Hope grows here." Kids ran between vegetable beds with plastic shovels, and volunteers handed out lemonade, and there in jeans and a soil-stained t-shirt was Damien Blackwell. kneeling helping a boy fix the bamboo frame for a tomato vine. Listening with real attention as the kid explained how plants don't grow if you yell at them, Damien smiled. I think people are the same. Ivy watched him quietly from the shade of a tree. When he finally noticed her, he didn't rush. Over. He didn't make a scene. He simply stood, wiped his hands, and walked to her like someone who knew every step forward depended on not pushing too hard. You came, said softly. I didn't say I wouldn't. They stood in the grass, sunlight filtering through leaves. I'm not here because of the letter either, he nodded. Then why? Looked around at the laughter, at the kids building something out of dirt and second chances. Because this is real, she said. And for the first time, I wanted to be part of something that wasn't about performance. He looked down, then back up at her. Then let's start with something small. He pulled out a paintbrush. Want to help? Paint the fence. Ivy raised an eyebrow. You trying to charm me with primary colors now? I'm trying to meet you where you are, he said. Not above, not ahead, just beside. She took the brush and dipped it in green. They painted side by side. Sunlight on their backs, silence growing into something gentle and true. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't the end. It was a beginning. This time, built not on contracts or dares, but on something much harder to define. Mutual choice, the rooftop of Blackwell. Tower looked different now, not because of the skyline that was still breathtaking, but because tonight it was empty. No gala, no guests, no performance, just Ivy. She stood near the railing in a soft linen dress, hair pulled into a loose braid. No makeup, no designer heels. Just herself, the same woman who had once stood here in silence after signing a contract that made her someone else now. She waited not for a photo shoot, not for press. For him, Damien stepped out of the elevator quietly. Dressed simply, dark slacks, open collar shirt, no tie. He walked toward her with a nervousness that didn't suit his usual stride. Ivy didn't turn to face him. Not yet. You called me here, she said softly, looking out over the lights. I wanted to return something. He wasn't. Holding anything? No envelope? She asked. No paperwork. She waited. I wanted to return the moment I took from you, Damien said. The first time you stood here, I handed you a pen and a trap. Ivy said nothing. He took a breath. This time, I have no script. Just ... a question. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet, not flashy. Simple wood. Then he knelt. Not as a CEO, not as a man with control, as someone with none. Ivy Torres, he said, voice steady. Will you marry me again, but for real this time? Ivy's breath hitched. He looked up at her, eyes clearer than they had ever been. No bet, no press, no image to manage. Just you, just me, just ... the life we could build? She stared at him, then at the ring. Simple, elegant, not a thing about it performative, you know, she said slowly. Most women get a proposal before the marriage. Damien smiled faintly. You never fit into anyone's order of things. She exhaled, walked closer, and crouched down, knees to the ground level with him. That's the first true thing you've ever said. He held the box out. She didn't take it. Instead, she reached for his face, cupped his jaw gently, and whispered, only if we get to paint fences sometimes and burn contracts. Damien's smile cracked into something real, vulnerable, joyful, alive. I'll even make ramen. They rewrote the ending. Not with ink, with choice. There were no chandeliers, no red carpets, no photographers hiding behind flower walls. Just a garden in Brooklyn, overgrown, imperfect, alive. A string of fairy lights zigzagged between trees. Wildflowers lined the aisle, potted by hand by the kids at Project Ripple. The guests. No socialites, no investors, only the people who'd earned their seats. Clara the stylist, Eli the assistant, the cafe crew, the volunteers. and a few wide-eyed children tossing petals out of paper cones. Ivy walked barefoot on the grass. Her dress was ivory cotton, stitched with love by a local seamstress. No corset, no glitter. It's just simplicity, and the kind of beauty that couldn't be borrowed. Damien stood beneath a wooden arch, wearing rolled-up sleeves, a crooked boutonniere, and a look in his eyes that said, "This time, I know exactly who I'm marrying." When Ivy reached him, they didn't need a cue. The officiant began. But their eyes never left each other. "Do you, Damien Blackwell, take Ivy Torres, not as a symbol, not for strategy, but as your equal in strength, in failure, and in love?" Damien answered before the question ended, "I do." "Do you, Ivy Torres, take Damien Blackwell not as redemption, not as rescue, but as your choice in truth, in imperfection, and in love?" Ivy smiled, tears dancing at the corners of her eyes. "I do." They didn't write long vows. They didn't need to, because everything they wanted to say had already been spoken in silence. They kissed, the guests stood and cheered, not because it was expected, but because everyone there had seen what it cost to get to this moment. They didn't dance to a rehearsed waltz. They swayed slowly, barefoot in the grass, Ivy resting her head on Damien's shoulder, the music of laughter and clinking mason jars filling the evening air. Later, over shared cupcakes and borrowed guitars, Ivy sat beside him on the garden bench. "You..." "No," she whispered. "I never thought I'd marry you twice." Damien grinned. "Technically, once was business." "And the second?" He looked at her like she was the only thing that had ever made sense. Forever. A year had passed. No scandal, no headlines. Just life. Messy, quiet, real. Ivy sat at a desk made from reclaimed wood in the sunlit office of the Ripple Foundation, a nonprofit now co-chaired by her and Damien. The room smelled like lavender and printer toner. On the shelf behind her were books about education, handwritten cards from former students, and a single framed napkin drawing of a basil plant with the words, "Keep growing anyway." She scanned the final page of the proposal. Scholarship program. The Ivy Initiative. For young women who were told they weren't enough and proved the world wrong anyway, it was bold, big, ambitious. In other words, very Ivy. At the bottom of the page was a signature line. She held the pen for a moment. Not because she hesitated, but because the weight of what it meant settled over her. Like sunlight, she didn't owe this success to anyone. Not to Damien. Not to the people who doubted her. She had earned it every inch, every scar, every step. She signed Ivy Torres Blackwell. Not because she needed his name, but because now carried the kind of meaning she could be proud of. A knock came at the door. Damien peeked in, holding 2 iced coffees. "You're late," she teased. "I was bribing the barista for extra caramel." She laughed and waved him in. He walked over, scanned the document, and whistled low. "You just changed a few hundred lives," she shrugged. "Give or take." He placed the coffees down, then kissed her forehead. "You still surprise me?" She leaned back in her chair, smiling. "That's the secret, Blackwell. Keep expecting nothing, and I'll keep over-delivering." Outside the window, children played in the courtyard garden, some running, some painting, one carefully tending a tiny patch of herbs. Ivy watched, eyes soft. "So, what's next?" Damien asked. She looked at him, then down at the signed paper, and answered with quiet certainty, "Whatever we choose, together." Ivy and Damien's story reminds us that love built on power, image, or control will always crumble under the weight of truth, but love that grows from vulnerability, accountability, and mutual respect, that's the kind that lasts. Ivy didn't need rescuing. Damien didn't need perfection. What they needed was honesty, growth, and the restore, and the courage to unlearn everything they thought made them valuable. Real love doesn't demand you change who you are. It invites you to become who you were always meant to be. In a world obsessed with appearances and status, their journey proves one simple truth. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be real. If this story moved you, even just a little, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. We have more emotional millionaire stories coming every week. Want more endings like this one? Real, raw, and redemptive? Tap the bell so you never miss an update. Okay. Share this video with a friend who still believes in second chances.